Have you ever wondered why the rich keep getting richer, while others, despite working long hours, sacrificing weekends, and giving their all, stay stuck in the same place? It's not just about having more money to start with. It's not about luck. And it's not about being smarter than everyone else. That's the myth, the comforting lie. The truth is more uncomfortable and far more useful. The real difference lies in what they avoid. Quiet, invisible mistakes, subtle habits, misguided beliefs that sneak into our routines and sabotage progress before we even realize it's happening. These aren't the dramatic failures you read about. These are the small, daily decisions that shape everything. Billionaires see them. Not because they're born with special vision, but because they've either suffered through them or had mentors who revealed them early. Elon Musk, for example, didn't just build rockets and electric cars out of brilliance. He did it by relentlessly removing the noise, dodging fatal errors others didn't even know were fatal. Imagine for a moment that you could learn those same insights, not from theory, but from the lived patterns of the world's wealthiest and most resilient minds. Not the Instagram version of success, the real version, the one built in silence, sacrifice, and strategy. This isn't just a list of rules. This is a breakdown of the 5 most fatal mistakes, the ones most people make without knowing, and the rich go to great lengths to avoid. And once you see them, you won't unsee them. Let's begin. There's a kind of deception we carry in our bones, something that feels like ambition, but is really just motion. You wake up early, you check your calendar, you answer emails, you sit in meetings, you make phone calls. You feel busy, and busy feels good. It feels important. But here's the trap. Movement isn't the same as progress. Most people don't realize this until it's far too late. They've spent years perfecting the art of staying busy, of appearing productive. But billionaires? They see right through it. Elon Musk doesn't waste a single minute on motion without direction. Every decision, every hour, every ounce of energy is filtered through one brutal question. Is this actually moving me closer to the goal, or just making me feel like I'm doing something important? There's something terrifying in that kind of honesty, because it forces you to confront how much of your life may have been spent in circles. How many days you've burned chasing approval, managing appearances, or doing things that looked like success but were just activity without impact. We live in a culture addicted to action. The grind, the hustle. But billionaires don't grind for the sake of grinding. They don't build routines to stay busy. They build systems to win. And more importantly, they know when to stop. They know that doing more isn't always the answer. Sometimes the smartest move is to do less with extreme clarity. This mistake, confusing motion for momentum, is deadly because it hides in plain sight. It's respectable, it's praised. People will applaud your calendar, your back-to-back meetings, your 16-hour workdays. But no one stops to ask, what did any of that actually accomplish? The rich, especially the self-made, learn to measure progress in brutally simple terms. Not how much was done, but what actually changed. Take Musk's first principles approach. When building SpaceX, he didn't start with what other rocket companies were doing. He broke down the problem to its raw physics. What do we actually need to get something into orbit? What materials are required? What would it cost to assemble them ourselves? He cut through layers of industry movement, regulations, traditions, comfort zones, and built a path no one had tried. Not because he worked harder, but because he worked differently. Most people are terrified to slow down and ask the hard questions, to stop long enough to confront the uncomfortable reality that all their effort may be misdirected. But the rich? They understand that clarity is worth more than speed. 1 hour of thinking clearly is worth 100 hours of scattered effort. There's another reason this mistake is so hard to detect. It feels good. There's a dopamine hit in checking boxes, crossing off tasks, updating your calendar. You feel accomplished, even if you haven't moved an inch toward what actually matters. And this is where most people stay trapped, productive on paper, lost in practice. The wealthy train themselves to detach from that feeling. They replace the satisfaction of doing with the clarity of impact. They measure outcomes, not effort. And they know that real progress is often quiet, even boring. It looks like saying no, like walking away, like canceling a meeting everyone else thought was important, like spending 5 hours on a single problem instead of answering 50 emails that wouldn't have changed anything. It's not glamorous. It's not something you can post on social media. But it works. Because the truth is, success doesn't reward effort. It rewards effectiveness. And if you don't know the difference, you'll spend your whole life running in place. So while the rest of the world races to stay busy, to look important, to fill their schedules with noise, it usually begins with small decisions. You choose to delay that difficult phone call. You push aside the idea that challenges you. You stick with the task you've done 100 times before because it's familiar, predictable, and safe. You tell yourself you're being practical, focused even. But what's actually happening is much harder to admit. You're choosing comfort over growth. Comfort isn't obvious. It doesn't knock on your door and declare itself. It disguises itself as balance, stability, or reward. And for most people, it becomes a way of life. Slowly, quietly. They begin to arrange their days around avoiding discomfort, even if that discomfort is the exact thing that would change their trajectory. They say yes to things that feel good, and no to things that feel hard. And that's how their potential dies, not with a loud failure, but with a quiet drift into mediocrity. Billionaires avoid this trap because they've learned that comfort is a liar. It tells you you're safe when you're actually stuck. It tells you you're doing enough, when deep down you know you're playing small. Elon Musk didn't build Tesla by staying in his lane. He didn't launch rockets because it was comfortable. He entered industries where he had no formal experience and risked public failure, financial ruin, and emotional collapse. Not because he wanted to suffer, but because he understood something most people never do. The path to greatness is paved with discomfort. Most people think success feels good. It doesn't, not at first. Growth feels like confusion, uncertainty, and risk. It feels like imposter syndrome. It feels like walking into a room where you don't belong and deciding to speak anyway. But we're not taught that. We're taught to avoid pain, to minimize risk, to chase stability. And so we design lives that feel good in the short term and unfulfilling in the long run. The rich play a different game. They've built tolerance for the uncomfortable. They understand that pain is a teacher, not an enemy. Every hard conversation, every rejection, every setback becomes raw material for evolution. They don't just survive discomfort, they seek it, not recklessly but deliberately. They enter rooms where they're not the smartest. They invest in skills they haven't mastered. They surround themselves with people who challenge them, not flatter them. What makes this mistake so fatal is how invisible it is. You can live your whole life inside it and never know. You can look successful to everyone else. Nice house, good job, decent money, and still be completely disengaged from your real potential. Because growth doesn't happen where things are easy. It happens where things stretch you, break you, force you to become someone new. And yet comfort whispers in your ear. Stay here. This is enough. Don't risk it. So you stay. You justify it. You convince yourself that it's wise, mature, responsible. But the longer you sit in comfort, the harder it becomes to leave. And one day you forget that you ever wanted more. Not because you failed, but because you stopped reaching. Billionaires never forget. Not because they're superhuman, but because they've trained their attention to focus on what hurts. They follow discomfort like a compass. If something makes them nervous, they examine it. If something feels too safe, they question it. They don't confuse ease with alignment. They don't let the familiar define what's possible. What most people call discomfort, they call data. Fear becomes feedback. Pain becomes direction. Doubt becomes a reason to dig deeper. They don't wait until they feel ready. They move forward before they're comfortable, because they know that's where transformation lives. That's the quiet difference. Not talent, not resources, but a deeper, almost primal willingness to feel what others avoid, to sit in the fire and stay awake, to stretch beyond the current version of themselves, again and again and again. So while the average person builds a life designed for comfort, the rich build a life designed for expansion. They don't stay where it's safe. They step into the storm not because it's pleasant, but because everything they want is on the other side of it. One of the most deeply rooted instincts in human nature is the desire to be liked. It's primal, evolutionary. In ancient times, being liked meant survival, acceptance by the tribe, protection, food, a place to belong. And though the world has changed, that wiring hasn't. Most people still operate under the invisible pressure to be approved of, validated, and accepted. They nod when they disagree. They shrink to avoid offending. They dilute their truth to avoid friction, because being liked feels like safety. But there's a cost, and billionaires know it intimately. While most people seek to be liked, the rich, and especially the radically successful, focus on something very different: being respected. And those two paths almost never overlap. Being liked often means compromising. Being respected means holding a line. Being liked requires making people comfortable. Being respected often demands making them uncomfortable. It's not about arrogance. It's about truth, integrity, clarity, and the willingness to be misunderstood. The average person filters their decisions through an emotional lens. How will this make others feel about me? The rich filter through a strategic one. What is the right move, regardless of how it makes others feel? That shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Because when your life is guided by the need to be liked, you become hostage to perception. You hesitate. You apologize for your ambition. You avoid tension. You blend in. Elon Musk is not universally liked. He's criticized, mocked, even hated in some circles. But he's respected, and that respect wasn't earned by charm or diplomacy. It was earned through conviction. He says things people aren't ready to hear. He pursues goals others call crazy. He makes decisions that confuse, anger, and challenge those around him. But he doesn't fold. Because he's not playing the short game of being liked today. He's playing the long game of building something that will matter tomorrow. This is a lesson most people never fully learn, because the need to be liked is rewarded early and often. In school, you're praised for fitting in. In jobs, you're promoted for compliance. In friendships, you're valued for keeping the peace. But being respected? That often requires being the one who says what no one else will. The one who stands firm when others want you to bend. The one who risks being seen as cold, intense, or even harsh, because you refuse to pretend. The richest minds in the world understand that growth, leadership, and truth don't live in comfort. They live in tension, in discomfort, in the space where people disagree, where feelings get hurt, where difficult decisions are made. They don't seek enemies, but they're not afraid to make some. They'd rather be respected for what they truly believe than loved for a version of themselves that isn't real. What makes this mistake so costly is how invisible it is. You can be talented, driven, even intelligent, and still sabotage your future because you're too concerned with keeping people happy. You play small so you don't make others feel insecure. You soften your voice so you don't come off too much. You say yes when everything in your body is screaming no, and people will love you for it. But that love will cost you your time, your vision, your authenticity. Being respected doesn't mean being cruel, cold, or unkind. It means being rooted in your values, even when they're inconvenient. It means choosing truth over approval. It means trusting that the people meant to walk with you don't need you to bend in order to love you. The rich know this. That's why they're willing to make unpopular moves, to be polarizing, to go against the grain. They've learned that respect creates gravity. People may not always like you, but they'll listen. They'll watch. They'll remember. Most people live under the weight of silent contracts, unspoken agreements that say, if I keep you comfortable, you'll accept me. And they never stop to ask what that comfort is costing them. Billionaires, on the other hand, tear those contracts up. They're not reckless. They're clear. And that clarity gives them a kind of freedom most people never taste. The freedom to speak, to act, to lead, without constantly editing themselves for someone else's approval. So while most people exhaust themselves trying to be liked by everyone, the wealthy learn to live with being misunderstood by many, because what they're building is not for applause, it's for impact. Distraction doesn't just steal your time, it steals your future. It arrives quietly, dressed as opportunity, urgency, or obligation. A new idea, a side project, a friend's request, a notification, a meeting. One by one, they pull at your attention, until your mind becomes scattered, your energy diluted, your vision foggy. And what's worse, you don't even notice it happening. Because being busy still feels productive, but billionaires play a different game. They're not interested in doing more. They're obsessed with doing less, with more intensity, more clarity, more depth. They know something most people don't, that success doesn't come from chasing 10 things. It comes from doing one thing with such relentless focus that the world is forced to pay attention. Most people live in a constant state of mental fragmentation. They jump between tasks, drown in noise, and wear distraction like a badge of honor. They multitask their dreams into oblivion. They start and stop, begin and abandon. Each year, a new plan, a new hustle, a new identity. And each year, nothing truly sticks. Not because they lack talent, but because they lack focus. Elon Musk didn't build SpaceX and Tesla at the same time by juggling. He built them by prioritizing. He focuses so intensely on specific problems that entire industries are disrupted in the process. His days aren't ruled by meetings or inboxes. They're ruled by engineering problems, the real work, the core mission, the single thread that matters. The rich know that everything comes with a cost. Every yes is a no to something else. And so they guard their focus like a sacred resource. They say no more than they say yes. They delegate the trivial. They eliminate the unnecessary. They design their lives around the mission, not the moment. That's the difference. Focus isn't glamorous. It doesn't feel exciting every day. It often looks boring, monotonous, repetitive. But that repetition is where greatness is forged, where mastery takes shape, where ideas become reality. And while others chase novelty, the rich refine their edge, over and over again until it becomes undeniable. Most people underestimate the compound effect of focused effort. One deeply focused hour a day, every day, for a year, can outpace entire months of shallow hustle. But we're not taught to think like that. We're taught to be available, responsive, reactive, as if success belongs to the most accessible person in the room. It doesn't. It belongs to the most intentional. Distraction is the default. Focus is a choice, and that choice is made every single moment, when you decide what to say yes to, what to ignore, what to pursue, and what to let go. Billionaires know that their future isn't built in grand moments. It's built in the quiet hours when no one's watching, when they're locked in, fully present, building brick by brick. They don't just protect their time, they protect their attention. Because attention is the gateway to creation. And if you give that gateway away to every ping, every demand, every opportunity that crosses your path, you'll never build anything that lasts. The difference isn't talent. It's not even luck. It's focus. Relentless, disciplined, almost obsessive focus on what truly matters, while the rest of the world drowns in noise. Most people won't avoid these mistakes, not because they're weak or lazy, but because these mistakes are comfortable. They blend in. They don't feel like mistakes until it's too late. But now you know better. You've seen what the rich avoid. You've felt the discomfort behind the truth. Now the question is, what will you do with that? Will you keep chasing movement over progress? Will you keep choosing comfort over growth? Will you keep trying to be liked while your potential shrinks in silence? Will you keep letting distraction decide who you become? Or will you do what the few do, the rare ones, the builders, the rebels, the visionaries? If this video gave you value, even just a moment of clarity, don't let it end here. Like this video so we can reach more people who are ready to rise. Comment below with the mistake that hit you the hardest. Your words might help someone else. Wake up. And if you're ready for more content that challenges the way you think, the way you live, and the way you build, subscribe to the channel. This is just the beginning.